All right, we're in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. It says, "Then God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so.
Mine is for appointed feast.
Let's zone in on verse 14. Depending on your translation, you might have, instead of seasons, you might have appointed times. Some people have feasts, depending on your translation. The Hebrew word for seasons is H4150. It's moed. The way that it actually is pronounced in the actual Hebrew would be, let's see here. Ule Moadim. Ule Moadim. So it's Moadim. And this is related with, let me go back to the dictionary. H4150, appointed place, appointed time, a meeting, appointed time, sacred season, set feast, appointed season, appointed meeting, appointed place. So it's basically an appointment. Okay, this is an appointment with Yahuwah, his appointments. And he has different appointments throughout scripture. There's certain times where he's going to actually do a specific thing on the earth, and he decides to do it during that specific time. And so if that's the case, then what this passage is saying here, if we read it all together with that in mind, it says, God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky. So the lights that are in the sky to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs. That means that the lights that are in the skies are for a sign. For what? For God's appointments. Okay? And that includes winter, fall, spring, summer. That's included in that, okay? Seasons. But what's also included in that is Judgment Day, when he's coming, when the Messiah would come. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different appointments throughout scripture where the Father decides to do things. When there's an eclipse, lunar or solar eclipse, sometimes there are things that happen that Yahuwah allows to happen during that time, you know? And so these what you call astronomical things that happen in the sky, they're for signs. Okay, nothing wrong with that. I'm not a professional at this area. I haven't studied the stars and the different constellations and things like that. I'm still learning that. I'm still learning it and seeing how the season lines up, how the year goes by, and how we can tell by the stars and things like that which season we're in. All that's definitely relevant. Okay. I think some people get carried away with it. We had a certain group of people that prophesied that the end of the Great Tribulation was going to begin because of the sign that was written in Revelation chapter whatever. I don't even remember what chapter it was, but basically about the virgin, bearing a child. And basically what they do is they would look at Venus, which is a pagan word of a female, in the sky with a certain star in her womb area, and that star was going to move outside, and that this was going to be a symbol of revelation happening. And this particular group that prophesied this, they got a small group of people to, it's been a little more a year. more than a year. But they actually fled to the Ozarks because they were afraid that I think around February of 2018, that this stuff, the tribulation was going to begin, and the FEMA camps and all that. And the time came and went. Our particular assembly, we wrote a letter. We wrote a letter to some of the people that were associated with this group that this was a false prophecy, not to leave with these people. They're not trustworthy, and I signed off on that letter. I helped out with the letter. I didn't write the letter, but I was part of the letter. And obviously I took all the heat for it because I'm a leader of Devoted to Yah. So I became the false prophet now. But who became the false prophet? The ones that actually made a false prophecy. Nothing happened. And then the leaders that actually started this actually are not in the Ozarks anymore. They couldn't survive out there. So they actually went back to their normal lives. That's what I heard. And then one of the people that was from my group that went with that group, they actually stayed in the Ozarks, and they're still there, and they're doing well. They're safe, and they actually want to stay out there, live off the grid and things like that. But I heard that the people that originally made these prophecies and everything, they couldn't even survive. So it's crazy. It's crazy. But so be careful. There are some people who go way out of proportion. And I believe it's very simple. I believe that if you're going to interpret prophecy and all this stuff with the skies, you need to have some kind of a resume. This is my strong conviction. I don't see anybody in scripture prophesying prophecies and interpreting dreams and visions if they don't have some kind of a resume of doing that in the past. I mean, you gotta have some kind of reputation of being a prophet. Like you prophesy something and it's come to pass. What's your resume? I think there's a lot of people just coming out of closets, coming out of wherever, and really trying to understand really, really mysterious and complicated things. And I think that could be very dangerous. So be careful of that. That's just my warning right there.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna find the scripture, but isn't there a scripture? Because I've struggled with that, especially in my past. But there's a scripture that talks about, not even gazing up at the heavens, not even, looking towards it, and not going after those who do astrology and things like that. So how do we, what is that line? How do we determine, that line to use it for the good of God, to, discern certain things, but not to get caught up in the mysticism of it, if that makes sense?
For me, I would like to do a video on this. It's just another thing of many things that I would like to do a video on. Yeah, there's a list of topics, but just to keep it simple, this would be the place to begin. Let's embrace Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 and 15. Let's start there. Let's start with the idea that the stars, the sun, and the moon are designed for signs. So let's embrace that. That's actually a fact. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? And Yahuwah made it, okay? There are specific designs in the stars that are persistent and consistent. So this isn't a pagan idea. This is an idea that Yahuwah created. So with that being said, I think it would be at least worth considering to study what these signs are, what the drawings are, what this, the Big Dipper and all that stuff. It's worth looking into and seeing what are the distinctions between them all. Without crossing the line of saying, here's astrology. Astrology says that this particular scorpion represents the Pisces, and this represents people that were born in the month of March, and that now you're starting to get into, this is identifying who I am, my traits, my personality. That is astrology. That is sorcery. That is witchcraft. We don't want to start getting into a person defining who I am based upon when I was born in the year and what the stars are telling me, because scripture doesn't say anything about that. That's where the line gets crossed, okay? But the line isn't crossed if you know the different figures, right? If you want to call him by a different name, I'm not sure if there's a different name for him other than what seems to be pagan. I'm not sure because I haven't studied this topic, but I'm sure that the pagans aren't the ones that came up with the idea, because Yahuwah is the one that created the different symbols in the sky. So I'm sure they're there for a reason. So it's not bad to study them, which ones they are, what are the different stars, what are the different designs. Nothing wrong with that. And then it's also not wrong to keep your eyes open. What's happening in the world? What's happening around us? Is it scriptural? Is it prophetic? And look up at the sky. Is there a connection with where the sky is and what's happening on the earth? Nothing wrong with that. But it's another story if now you get fixated and you're constantly looking up at the sky and you're so fixated on it that it's like distracting you from other things. And then you're also like starting to come up with doctrines, and you're starting to come up with your own prophecies, and when you get too caught up in it, too involved, because I don't see scripture telling us to get involved like that. I see scripture telling us to acknowledge it. Look up, be aware, be on the lookout, be watchful. When the sun turns to blood, you know, when the moon doesn't give its light, or when the sun no longer gives its light. These are things to consider. Maybe he's talking about an eclipse. Okay, so every time an eclipse happens, let's be aware of it. An eclipse is happening today, and let's keep our ears and our eyes open. What's happening on the news? What's the news not telling us? What's happening around the world? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then everything should be gearing back towards preaching the gospel and focusing on getting people to turn back to Yahuwah. It shouldn't be, you know, fear-mongering, you know, trying to sell some products during this time.
The reason why I asked is I had someone who I was trying to exchange scripture with, and he said that he wanted to give a reading, but he is already supposed to be Hebrew or Israelite. I mean, we had a whole conversation about Israel and the people coming into covenant, and seemed like we were like-minded, but then the reading thing threw me off. And I mean, things that he was saying I could relate to, and it sounded true, but I just remember in scripture, you know, that there being a fine line between sorcery and, you know, the signs and the appointed time. So yeah, that's why I asked that question.
You mean like a palm reading, like a?
Well, that's what I thought, but he sent me, you know, words about, you know, things that identify with my character. That was the reading. So I'm like, I don't think that's a scripture. So yeah.
I mean, that's astrology. When you use the term reading, that's definitely identifying some scripture reading. It's identifying.
Right, that's what I thought.
It's identifying who you are based upon the stars and stuff like that, and that's not scriptural. You're defined by who Yahuwah says you are. You're defined by how Yahuwah made you, and he's not limiting to making people a certain way based on where the stars are when you were born in the year. If that was the case, then everybody would be exactly the same who was born at the exact same time. But anyway, yeah, that's there's a lot of people claiming to be Israelites, claiming to be Torah observant. They got the lingo, but they still holding on to astrology, Kabbalah,
Babylon,
Egyptology, and all this demonic stuff. So I can't warn anybody enough.
Well,
I can't warn anybody enough.
I gotta find it, but I mean, Yahuwah warned us when he sends, he said, I will send prophets to test you, false ones.
Yep.
Who will make signs and wonders come to pass. I gotta find the verse. Who will make signs and wonders come to pass. But if they tell you to follow another God, then you know it's really not me. And go ahead and kill them. So just I gotta find it, but
yeah.
All that stuff came out of Babylon, you know, like it came from the captivity of the Hebrews in Babylon. So they might be Hebrew, but our Bible's pretty clear that these poor Hebrews keep messing around with everything they shouldn't. And it's still true to this day.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go ahead. So there's a little bit in the beginning. Let's just acknowledge the stars, the moon, and the sun are there. Yahuwah created it, and they're created for signs. It's true. They are for signs. Not for signs on who we are and what we are, but signs for Yahuwah's appointments, things that he's planning on doing on the earth. Checkpoints in the different chapters of Yahuwah's story. Let's put it that way. All right, let's continue reading verse 16.
I have the verse.
Milo has a verse that she was talking about. Can you repeat what you were talking about first before you share the verse?
It's about the false prophets that he'll send. It's just, I'm just going to give the reference. Deuteronomy 13, probably 1 to 5, if not a little bit more. Yeah, that's all.
Can you do me a favor and take your phone off of Wi-Fi if it is?
I was trying to download the things.
Okay. I think it's affecting the live feed. Okay, Genesis chapter 1, verse 16. So God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He also made the stars. Okay, some passages don't say he also made the stars. Some passages say and the stars. Okay, this is a controversial verse. People try to say that the moon is not the lesser light. They would say that the stars are the lesser light. I remember I did a video on this. Yeah, I remember I did a video on this, but let's go to, let's do some cross-referencing here. I have Psalms chapter 136, verse 8. Go to Psalms 136, verse 8. Some people argue that the moon isn't included in the star, in the lights that are in the sky to tell time. And this verse right here will debunk that. Psalms 136, verse 8. It says, the sun to rule by day, for his loving kindness endures forever. The moon and the stars to rule by night, for his loving kindness endures forever. So right here is proof that the moon and the stars rule by night. It's not just the stars. So if you're gonna use a calendar, it ought to include all three, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Jeremiah 31, verse 35. Jeremiah 31, verse 35. It says, Yahuwah, who gives the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and the stars for a light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. Yahuwah of armies is his name. I don't think it gets any more clear than that. Sun, moon, and stars, all created by Yahuwah. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 35. And then what does it say right after that in verse 36? It says, if these ordinances depart from before me, says Yahuwah, then the offspring of Israel also will cease from being a nation before me forever. So that means Israel will never stop being a nation to Yahuwah. Okay, until heaven and earth pass away. Heaven and earth has not passed away yet. Anybody got any questions? I have a video on YouTube for more information on this, why I go by the moon for months. It's on my YouTube channel. If you want to see it, just look it up, Devoted to Yah, moon. Look up moon on my channel. Okay? Moving on. When that thing is done, can you take it off of Wi-Fi?
I already took it off.
All right. All right, Genesis chapter 1, verse 17. It says, God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light to the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. All right. I'm going to pause there.